Okay, good evening, everyone. I'm going to call this meeting of the Harrisonville Board of Aldermen to order. If you would rise and recite the pledge with us, please. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. All right, Mr. Clerk, could we have a roll call, please?
Yes, ma'am. Alderman Davidson.
Present.
Alderman Zaring.
Present.
Alderman Dorhoff.
Present.
Alderman Franklin.
Present.
Alderman Milner.
Present.
Alderman Reese.
Present.
Alderman Turner.
Present.
Alderman Mills.
Present.
Mayor Bowman.
Present, thank you. We do have a quorum, and I'm honored and thrilled that we do have some ceremonial matters this evening. You know, I've been honored to watch, and these last 2 years to participate in issuing the proclamation for the National FFA. And it's just a huge honor for me to do this. I know these kids. I love these kids. I love the program. I have the greatest admiration for Mr. Dekoff and Mr. Straight and the leadership that they bring, both to the FFA club and then as ag instructors in our schools. So we've got lots of FFA members on the meeting tonight. And I'm just going to ask you just to unmute your microphones and tell us who you are. I'll start with you, Trey.
I'm the treasurer of Cass Career Center FFA.
Okay, excellent. Appreciate that. Austin? You may have been muted. Can you try again, Austin?
Okay.
Okay. Sorry, we just can't hear you. We'll move over to Trevor.
Trevor Campbell, and I'm the president of our Cass Career Center chapter.
Okay, I salute you, Mr. President. Joe?
Hi, I'm Joe Wardlow, and I'm the sentinel of the chapter.
Excellent. George?
I'm George Fries, and I'm the vice president of the Cass Career Center FFA chapter.
Excellent. Thank you. Ella? Excellent. We're glad that you're here. Nate?
Hey guys, my name is Nathaniel Davini, and I'm the secretary of the Cass Career FFA chapter.
Welcome. Thank you for being here. Mr. Dekoff, you have a fine group of leadership here supporting what you're doing. I am just majorly impressed.
Thank you, Mayor Bowman. Mr. Strite and I are very proud of these fine young men and women.
Do you have anything you'd like to say before I issue your proclamation?
I do not. Our president has just a few words that he'd like to share with you before the proclamation.
Okay, that'd be great. Mr. Campbell.
Yeah, thank you for having us tonight, and thank you for always supporting not only our Cass Career chapter, but just Cass County, all the FFA members and future farmers. We really appreciate it. It means a lot.
Well, we appreciate you too. All right, with honor then, I'm going to issue this proclamation. It's the National FFA Week proclamation. It says, whereas FFA and agricultural education provide a strong foundation for the youth of America and the future of food, fiber, and natural resources systems, and whereas FFA promotes premier leadership, personal growth, and career success among its members, and whereas agricultural education and FFA ensure a steady supply of young professionals to meet the growing needs in science, business, and technology of agriculture. And whereas the FFA motto, learning to do, doing to learn, earning to live, living to serve, gives direction and purpose to these students who take an active role in succeeding in agricultural education. And whereas FFA promotes citizenship, volunteerism, patriotism, and cooperation. Therefore, I do designate the week of February 20th to 27th, 2021 as National FFA Week. Signed, Mayor Bowman on February 16th, 2021. This is your proclamation. We will have it framed and get it to you so that you can display it wherever you would choose to do so. So as the Mayor and Board of Aldermen, we can't actually see you to do this, but I know that we want to just give you a round of applause. So congratulations. Thank you again so much for being part of our meeting tonight. You're welcome to stay just as long as you wish, or if you want to get off the call, that's fine too. Thank you again for being with us. All right, moving on to public participation. Mr. Ratliff, did we have any agenda request forms this week?
No, ma'am. No, ma'am.
Okay, thank you. I would ask you at this time, if you have a cell phone, please put it on mute. And then also monitor your use of your audio on the Zoom meeting. If you're not speaking, if you would please mute your microphone, that would really help on the feedback. All right, we're moving on then to the approval of the minutes. First is the approval of the minutes of the regular meeting of the Board of Aldermen of February 1st. I would entertain a motion.
Make a motion to approve.
Second.
I had a motion from Alderman Zaring and a second from, I think Alderman Dorhoff was a tie with Alderman Milner, so y'all can fight over it. But I'll go ahead and take you, Mr. Dorhoff. So the motion is first of all from Alderman Zaring with a second from Alderman Dorhoff. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Aye.
Anyone opposed? All right, those minutes become accepted as they were written. Next is the Board of Aldermen work session, February 1st, 2021. I'd entertain a motion again.
Motion to approve. Second.
I have a motion from Alderman Turner with a second from Alderman Davidson. All in favor?
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Thank you. Those minutes also stand approved and accepted as they were written. Moving on to our agenda items. First up is the year-end budget update from the city of Harrisonville. I believe Mr. Hart is on the call.
I am.
Good evening, sir. Yes, we can hear you.
Great. I'm going to share my screen. Hopefully it comes up for you if you confirm for me.
We have it.
Awesome. So this last summer, or the summer and the fall, you guys had asked for quarterly budget reports. And what I'd like to do is start with the year-end, the 2020 year-end, actually, for kind of an overview or a snapshot of what the pre-audit, the unaudited numbers look like, and just some of the highlights of the information. Keep in mind, this is for the end of the year, end of 2020. The next time you probably see me will be at in April to cover the first quarter. That doesn't mean you're not going to get reports. I'll touch down that at the end of this presentation. What we're going to go over today is just the fund status, if you will. All of the funds. There's 9 different funds that are measuring the city's operations. In those funds, we're going to touch on the revenues, some of the key revenue highlights, go through some of the expenses and budget to actual results. And then finally, what I would like to do is kind of go through moving forward. What is that going to look like? And hopefully that'll satisfy a lot of what hasn't been done here recently, that you guys will have more information moving forward. So we'll jump right in. The fund status, the one way to measure the fund's status, if you will, and each one of these items you could consider as a checkbook, if you will. The biggest one is the general fund. What this shows is a surplus or a deficit within each one of those funds. Deficits aren't necessarily bad. It just means you're spending your savings account down a little bit. In this case, we're going to compare 2019 to 2020. The green line is 2019, and then this light green, mint green is 2020. back 2019 and then 2020. The first column is the general fund.
We
You can
can't
see
see that
420.
screen, Ben. We can't
Oh,
see
you
that
can't?
screen. We just still see your agenda screen,
Okay. Well,
your agenda slide, I mean.
did that flip on you? That didn't, did it?
It's,
Let me see. Let me try this again. Oh, Harrison. Are you seeing the screen now? The one that says surplus or deficit?
not yet. It says that you've started sharing your screen.
Jeremy, do you have this? You can probably put it up. I won't make him give the presentation.
That's good. You're very kind.
There we go.
Okay,
There we go.
now we're with you.
So what
Thank you.
There we go. So what you can see is the different columns here of the different revenues we've got, or the different funds. We've got 9 different funds, starting with the general fund on the far left, ending with the community center on the far right. When I say revenue or surplus or deficit, we're talking about revenues over or under expenses. The green line here is the 2019, where 2019 ended, and the light green is where 2020 is. You see the general fund had a surplus around 422,000, and there's obviously multiple reasons for that. You guys stopped spending when COVID hit, and that has the benefit of slowing expenses down. One of the other things is the sales tax came in above where we thought it would. And then finally, not all the asphalt money set aside was spent last year. So that'll be rolled over in 2021 for capital spending. Even with the rollover of that asphalt money, it still would have been around $150,000 positive for our surplus. In 2019, that was around $100,000 negative within the general fund. Emergency services, this will change a little bit because there's a couple things that aren't booked right now. One of the biggest is bad debt, which when we go through the audit, we meet with the auditors to be able to determine what that bad debt write-off looks like, write-down looks like. Then the next biggest one is the water and sewer solid waste. I'm sorry, water and sewer over here, $1.3 million surplus. Depreciation is not charged as part of that, so this number will come down substantially. It should be around 200,000 by the time we get done. So that's still a healthy number that we've come up with. The community center, the final one, was a little anomaly. Obviously, the community center was shut down for a major portion of COVID. However, expenses continue to happen because you need to take care of the building itself and you still have salaries to pay. And that's really what happened. We saw the annual memberships cut in half. So that wasn't as much as what we thought would come in when the budget was actually adopted. But we saw this throughout the year. When the community center come back open, we can see some of the revenue start picking back up again. Next slide, please. So where do the city revenues come from? Where are the resources, if you will? You can see the biggest chunk of this is charges for services. This is citywide. This is all funds. So all funds and all revenues coming into the city. What are the biggest pieces of it? Charges for services around $21 million of a total in the middle, 33.28. The charges for services is 80% of that is utilities. It's your electric, your water, sewer, and your refuse. That's all part of that. The next one down, obviously, is sales tax. Sales tax here include not just the city sales tax, but also public safety. So public safety is lumped into there at around $4.3 million. And you can see each one of them going down the line. Other sources and transfers, just for definition sake, those are transferred out. And any kind of proceeds that are recognized as far as, well, this year it'll be leases, but any kind of bond issue proceeds. The other tax up here at 0.65 is things like the surtax or surcharge, any kind of financial institution tax. It's a miscellaneous county and state tax that we receive. And then obviously you can see real and personal property tax. Next slide, please. So of those revenues, citywide revenues, how did we compare against 2019? So we defined how much we have been receiving. So how do we do against that 2019 number? And you see in charges for services, we're virtually tied when you add up all those utilities. Sales tax, again, we're virtually tied. Typically in the past, you've seen the sales tax on the green bar, the bottom, which is 2020, the dark green bar. You've seen that above the prior year. Typically, when we started the year, we thought 2020 would end lower than what 2019 was. In fact, we thought it would end substantially lower. When we started digging into, Kim and Jeremy and I started digging into sales tax returns, we could tell certain habits started taking form. When you stay home, you tend to spend at home. That means use tax comes in. When you stay at home, you also have other things to do, which means hardware stores or pharmacies have better years, if you will, and they've still not slowed down. Those type of sales have not slowed down from what we can tell. With the exception of other sources and transfers, most of these revenues end up being higher than what it was in 2019. Go ahead, the next slide, please. So if we take, because of the charges for services is such a big number, that graph kind of gets distorted a little bit. This kind of gives you a better idea or better view of how we ended in those same numbers. So all this chart is just taking charge of services out of there so you can see the smaller lines better. One of the things up here on the intergovernmental, you can see the 570 some thousand. Part of that, well, most of that is going to be COVID related grant monies that come in. And so we've seen that, we've seen obviously a good sized share of that coming in. Next slide, please. So that's revenues. Where did that resources go? The citywide expenses here, just like the revenue slide, this is the total expenses citywide, all funds. Where did most of those go? Obviously, we're a service-driven organization. We have public servants who need supplies and services in order to provide that service. So personal services, service and charges and supplies are evenly, pretty much even distribution. And you can see on the right-hand side, kind of some of the definition of what some of these have. Personal services obviously is anything salary, overtime, and benefits. That's included in all funds. Services and charges are any kind of insurance or repairs or maintenance of vehicles. And then supplies, safety supplies, fuel, small tools, things that don't get capitalized are in the supplies area. And then capital outlay obviously is just capital. That's the items that you would typically see that's depreciated. Usually it's infrastructure, large equipment. In this case, in 2021, we just issued a lease that will have a lot of that equipment. Grant's working on a major capital project, obviously, throughout this year. So that number is going to go up for 2021. You can see when we move through the year, you can see some of those expenses come in and how that increases. Debt service payments, those will start slowing down, if you will, in 2023. 2022 is the last year for 2012's bond payment. And so we'll see that gap narrow some. Next slide, please. So how did we compare in this case against 2019? And you can see the general fund had decreased in the general fund on the expense side from 8.2 down to 7.9. EMS was stable. You can see again, the emergency services in this case doesn't have the bad debts in it, so that'll come up a little bit. Bond and interest is pretty much even. The park fund, you can see, is pretty much even as well. Aquatic Center, obviously there was it was closed. So you can see a lot of the expenses just didn't happen. Community Center, there was a difference in the Community Center and the utilities. You can see the utilities kind of making up the last three of those. Next slide. So when you where did the money go? Well, how do we meet it? Did we meet our expectations? How do we compare against what we had budgeted in 2020? And the CC is the community center in this case. What the budget was is the light green area. The dark green is the expenses as they come through. You can see the Aquatic Center. If anything, not much of that budget was spent. Park was the same way. The enterprise funds, the CWSS, electric funds, both have a fairly substantial reserve for obvious purposes, whether there's outages, rolling blackouts, if there's items that are catastrophic that we need access to that savings. What that budget does is allow us to access that should we need that, instead of having to wait and come back constantly for that budget. But that's what that difference really is really sitting in reserves on both CWSS and the electric fund. Now, all the way down here at the bottom, we've got general fund. Obviously, you can see that general fund was a reduction from the budget, well, mostly due to the slowdown in expenses. On the EMS side, the difference there is fairly even, the 3.986, and it's just over a $4 million budget after we did our budget amendment last year. Go ahead and move to the next slide, please. You've seen some of these, and these are the key revenue history, just to kind of show you what some of those revenues have done in the past and how we ended the year. This is what Brad calls the dashboard. I get this out to him on a monthly basis, and plan on attaching that monthly to the rest of the reports you guys get as well. So if you saw nothing else, some of the key revenues, how did we perform in the past against where we are now? 2020 is the dark line, and the light green line is again the 2019. And you can see most of it was pretty flat, with the exception of this audit entry that happened in June in the real estate tax and the general fund, which had a dip. Otherwise, it would have been fairly flat on the real estate side. The personal property is the same way. Go ahead, next slide, please. Here is the sales tax. This is just the sales tax, the city sales tax. On the bottom set of charts is the public safety sales tax. And you can see that this had increased on the past number of years that's presented here. You can see it's a fairly steady slope upward. And we thought that maybe that when the budget 2020 was set for 2020, we thought that would be an increase. In this case, you're going to see that flatten out when you see the 2021's version of this. 2020 will actually be populated in that set of graphs off to the left, so you can see where we ended. And then the month-to-month revenues are kind of all over the place in sales tax, and most of it was because of the shutdown recession. In May, you can see everybody was locked in the houses. Nobody went out and spent any money, but that changed over the summer. Let me go to the next slides, please. And here's the utilities, the electric charges and the water sales. Same thing here. Electric charges came out fairly good in November, December. Obviously, January is going to be more than likely phenomenal revenue source. It's just a matter of it because of the temperature. Next slide, please. And then the next two slides, I'm not going to go through these in detail. These are just for high-level purposes. What I did show here is the fund balance is part of expenses, where we ended in 2020, the percentages that you see there on the slide. From 19 to 20, like in general fund, you can see 74% fund balance to expenses. And this is one of the things that rating agencies will track to determine the health of it, partially determine the health of a city, financial health of the city. The other is going to be the spending, but this is called budget flexibility, if you will. And you guys continue to manage budget very well. And we still have, obviously, we still have issues with the emergency services fund with negatives. Emergency services fund for the end of the year will be collapsed into the general fund for the auditors. But we show it as a separate fund. So general fund is assumed to have taken care of the emergency services fund. We talked about this last summer in the fact that we're going to need to start talking about another revenue source with the emergency services fund. And you can go to the next slide, Jeremy. The previous one was year to year, and this is the budget to actual, so you can kind of see where we compared from budget to actual for each one of these. And you should have either electronic copy of this or a paper copy. I think Daniel sent it out electronic. Go ahead and go to the next slide. So just to line this up, what I would like to talk about is what we're going to do moving forward. What you just saw, what I'd like to do is continue to provide that information on a quarterly basis, so you can kind of see where everything's happening. January's not going to give you a whole lot of information because it's 1 month out of 12. But if you get 3 months, obviously you're going to see a pretty good chunk of the year. So a lot of that other information, the top level information they can provide, and I continue to provide it. I'm going to do that in more of a PDF kind of document way. Obviously, it can be available to answer questions or even make a presentation if you think that's needed. But then going into the summer and early fall, we'll have 6 months under our belt, and what I'd like to do is be back on calendar for the budget, so we start talking early, a lot earlier next year, what that budget process looks like. Start with CIP and work on other items as well. So the monthly reports you'll get, and those are in your packet right now. You've got one monthly report that shows 2 different ways. If you go to the next slide, what this is a high level rolled up version of budget to actual. So the report you've got in your packet starts with this. I think it's page 12 of your packet. But you'll see the original budget, current budget. These two, the original budget and current budget, will change. You'll see a difference there if any budget amendments come through. The period activity is going to be the 12th period, obviously, for December here. And then the fiscal activity is just the year to date. In this case, it's calendar year because we're into the year. Any kind of variance between your budget, the current budget, the fiscal activity will show up in that next column, and then the percent remaining. So you can see the revenue on the revenue side, we had 6.5% remaining. We're under budget by around $500,000. And most of that's sitting in either taxes or sales tax. And the taxes piece is going to be franchise taxes rolled up into property tax. So if you go to the next one, what you see is line items. So the line items here, I think, is what you guys were looking for this last summer or fall. And there's a lot of information in here as you kind of go through them. In the past, you've seen descriptions, just like this 3% over 2020 amended estimate. And that's actually probably carried over from 19. But you'll see throughout that report, I think it starts on page 20, you'll see a line item detail for each one of these. And what it'll do, you can see sales tax, it'll take the rolled up numbers and split them out. So that way, if you've got something you're looking at that's a big difference, you can go back to that funds page and you can go and see what's made up and that's made up of. A lot of information here. I know when we produce this type of information, some people like it, some people hate it. So we tried to put a mix of things in there to where you can really look at it kind of high level snapshot, or if you're interested in the detail, it's still there. I believe in the past, you guys have had a budget to actual report come to you. I know from a rating standpoint, they love it when governing bodies have access to this information because it's part of your policy, part of your management. Financial results always are part of that decision-making process. You'll see these on a monthly basis. This comes right out of Encode, a new finance system that Jeremy and Kim have worked the tail off on. Worked very hard. They've got it in place. It's aesthetically a lot easier to look at than what the previous system had. There are 2 other reports here that I didn't include in the packet yet. There's a balance sheet that I track for cash purposes, cash balance purposes, and then the income statement that shows 2019 against 2020. And if you're interested in something like that, then I can show that to you as well. More early in the year, though, you'll look at current budget versus physical activity. The system will print pretty much anything. So if you're interested in something, let us know and we can get it to you. I think that's the end of what I've got for you guys. Yep, that's the end of it. So Mayor, if you guys have any questions, or if you have questions as you go through the reports, you read through them, you have questions about that, email Brad, he can get that to me, and we can organize how that gets returned back to you. That's a lot of information to go through.
It is, but it's pleasing to the eye, just much easier to read than the reports that we're accustomed to receiving. So thank you for that. And I'm a real fan of the dashboard. I think that's just a real excellent piece. Questions from the board for Mr. Hart?
Mayor, I would, Ben, you said that you could also include the cash balances.
Yes, the
Yeah,
balance
that'd
sheet,
be great.
definitely.
I think that'd be real
Okay.
interesting to watch, if you don't
Yeah.
mind.
Definitely. No, I'll do that. That's not a problem.
Thank you.
I thought about putting those in here, but then you'd end up having like 200 pages. So I'd pare them down just to what, you think you'd want to do.
Any other questions or comments from the board?
Yes, Mayor. Real quickly,
Alderman?
Ben, I love the charts.
Okay.
And I didn't see, your presentation, you didn't provide to us. So it's not in our packet, correct, Mayor? If I did, I missed it. This is actual presentation, because I like those charts.
Yeah, if it's not, hopefully you do get, well, you will get it. I know Daniel's got it. We can push it out to you. The idea there is you could take this information and pieces of that you can hang on to for reference purposes, at least for the end of the year, because sometimes you may have questions. You have questions asked of you that you typically wouldn't. Somebody hits you with a question, you don't know that there's some financial, how much of our budget goes toward fill in the blank. And hopefully that'll get that to you.
Okay, thank you very much, Ben.
Definitely, yeah, definitely.
Thank you, Ben, for making those additional things available. Any other comments or questions from the board before we let Ben go?
Madam Mayor,
Yes, Mr. Ratliff.
I just wanted to also emphasize for the board and credit to them. So Ben, if I'm correct, in 2019 there was a over $100,000 deficit, and during the pandemic, we actually came out. If you took the street 300,000 out, about 120,000 to the positive. So with the staff
Yeah,
and
that's
the
right.
board working together, we overcame a $220,000 swing. Is that
And
correct?
took advantage, that's exactly right, and took advantage of resources that came toward us to right size some of the COVID related issues that we've never seen before. You guys jumped on that immediately, and we've got clients that are still looking for some of that reimbursement. You guys are done. Yeah, so you did a really good job of reacting to that too.
I
Thank
just have one more question. Oh,
Yes,
sorry.
Alderman.
So in our report that we've got in our agenda, does it give us, just out of curiosity, because someone asked me this the other day, how much have we spent out of like the CARES money? How much have we actually spent of that money? Is it in here?
That's going to get down to, it's probably going to get down into a detail that's low enough to where it wouldn't be kind of immediately discernible. I know Brad or some of the other guys might have exactly what those numbers are. We can get them to you. And that'd be a logical question I'd be asking like a board member as well, is how much money have you received and what did you use it for?
Yeah, I just,
Yeah, we can get
somebody,
that to you though.
a friend had asked me that, and I said, I honestly don't know that answer yet. So I thought while we were on this, I would ask that.
Definitely.
Mr. Ratliff, did you want to comment on Alderman Milner's question?
Yeah, we can give a detailed report, or we can give a as a fiscal year, because the last middle, I believe, was in January, because if you all remember, they extended it out to March. Well, they first told us we had 864,000, then they cut us down to 585,000. So as a result, we also submitted, and Chief Hofer can vouch, we first submitted in our first application, we submitted all of our police department and EMS payroll and were denied by the county on those reimbursements. They said it wasn't eligible. Then they changed the ordinance that they were utilizing around the end of November, around November sometime. And so the monies that we had left, we actually submitted our last pay application, just nothing but 4 salaries. So we can give a report on where those items out and where they went. And that'll be part of the year-end financials, that when the audited financials come out. Because there's going to be, remember, we got to do 2 audits, because you've got the normal audit that we do and then the federal audit that we have to do, because those are technically federal funds.
Right. And the federal audit will actually detail what those funds were and where they came from, what federal agency they flowed through. So you'll get actually a report that only deals with that, and the auditors will actually produce that report for us.
So we'll have that, we won't have that then till end year, is that what you're saying?
We can get the information from what was spent in 2020. We can get that to you and put it in the next report that goes out,
Okay,
which
that'd be
will
great.
more than likely be in the next meeting. Yeah,
That'd
that's
be
not a problem. What we're saying is that audit will show everything. It'll have, and that will be the end. Well, it'll be the middle of this year before that happens. So we'll get information to you a lot sooner than that.
That's perfect.
That's
Thank you.
what the January report ought to be coming out with the next meeting.
Okay, good. Thank
We'll
you.
just include it as part of that.
And Daniel has just re-emailed those financials in case you didn't get it the last time. It's in another email to you. So thank you, Daniel, for doing that so quickly. All right, any other discussion on the financials with Mr. Hart before we move on? Okay, Ben, thank you very much. We appreciate
Thank
your
you very much.
expertise. You bet.
You bet.
All right, the next item on our agenda is the city administrator's State of the City address to the mayor and to the board. This is something that we've not had before, and so I am looking forward to hearing it. And then I will just let you know, just as a matter of information, I'll be doing a State of the City address to the citizens on the 20th of May. So it'll be a little bit different, because this is going to be a lot of data that Brad has put together for us. And then I'll be giving just an update on the state of the city in the spring. So Brad, it's all yours.
All right. Hopefully it goes better for me on the share screen than it did Ben. Okay, can you see that?
Yes.
Yes.
All right. So one of the things I enjoy doing for you all is giving you information. You know, I raise my kids, knowledge is power, and I feel as elected officials, this knowledge is for you, for the power to be able to respond to the citizenry on the hard work that you've done this past year. As you all know, it's the first pandemic that any of us have guided through. It's met us with a lot of challenges, but also opportunities. And we've gotten a lot done as a team this year with elected officials, staff, department heads working together for this. So I have essentially about 47 slides of data that I'm going to be going through with you. Feel free to interrupt me along the way if you have any questions, and I'll do my best to answer them. So Ben gave you somewhat of a overview of citywide funds for this past year. And one of the reasons we try to show this data to information to people is because there's a lot of misnomers that are out there. There's a lot of misinformation. Everybody feels because you're a local government, then you operate like the federal government, and that's not true. So you look at our funds that are larger funds here in conjunction with the operating costs as well as the salaries for that. So you can see operating wide all the way across. When you take all of our funds with debt, elected officials, with the electric system, public works, it's about 21.3% for all funds citywide. When you look at those all funds on the salary breakdown and where are we paying for in the most, and where our money is going. So if you take 2020, for example, and split out through all of those funds, you can see you have general admin, you have the police department, you have the CWSS, which is our combined water and sewer system, and our public works guys, as well as finance, and then the electric system. So if you dive down a little further than that on the general fund of those breakouts, then you see the breakout of the salaries, which in the general fund is about 41% on those on that breakdown. But then if you look at in comparison, the operating budget, you've got still the police department at close to 17%, public works at 9. And then the transfer, that's the monies that are being transferred out of the general fund to cover some of the costs that we're utilizing for the park fund, as well as the money that we're utilizing for the EMS fund. So you can see that's a big portion that comes out of the general fund each and every year to make sure that we balance those budgets. When you take the general fund salary breakdown and where is most of those funds going towards salaries, the police department is one of the bigger the funds on the general fund. This is normal in most cities. Your police department, you can't spread them to other funds. They're right there square on the general fund. I kind of teased the chief one time, unless we can figure out how to make them park rangers too, to spread them out further on the fund balances. But that's a biggest portion of where our funds go. And you can see those breakouts from those salary funds. And I do this because you hear, oh, you're paying all this in admin cost, and you're paying mostly all this in here. And this really gives you where your funds are going. No, you as the alderman are paying a lot toward safety of our community. And then when you take the enterprise funds, as pointed out with Ben on the water and the sewer and the solid waste, and you look at where those are going as far as operating cost, where 63% of that is the electric system and the operating cost, and water and sewer combined at 21%. And then solid waste is really a pass through at the 4%. But of that, in the enterprise fund, only 12% of that is going towards salaries. So when people are telling you, you're paying for a lot of staff and you're doing a lot of these things with staff, you can say, no, we're really paying most of our money for the operating of the investment into these systems. Same thing with the enterprise fund salaries and how that's broken out. You can see from the sewer crew to the water, to the linemen, managers only at the 12%. So you can see that, again, you're not top heavy in how we're delegating those funds in the enterprise fund. So then you look at debt over the next 10 years, people will make claims that decisions that you've made have put us in debt forever and ever, and you've just made debt worse. Well, as you can see over a 10-year period, by 2023, your debt begins to fall considerably. And so the decisions you have made to invest into the stormwater system, to the sewer system, is into the park system, is not put you on a trajectory of debt spending. But because we're dovetailing a lot of those debt funding into ones that are coming off, you're actually seeing a decline in the actual debt and the decisions that's been made. When you look at the total expenditure by type in 2021, this is not 2020, but the same type of investment that you did in the budget for 2021, where we're investing in the public utility, we're in capital outlay and the public safety, and then in general government. And you can then see where the debt lies in that with all those funds. again, not debt spending, but you're actually doing investment spending. Total expenditure by the fund, where's most of those funds going? Water and sewer system, then electric, then general fund, and all the way down. And you can see again, debt service toward the bottom of those type of expenditures. So then you look at 2021, and what did we do a little different in 2020 for the budget process? We took advantage of low interest rates for the sewer and park projects. This is unprecedented times of interest rates, and you as a board made the quick and good decisions to get the best bang for the dollar for your citizens and for your city. We have the finance and information technology that now is split out within the budget, where we can actually see what our costs are in those departments. Community development and codes, the same way, where we can see our costs and our needs a lot more. And I can tell you that some of the 10-year staff, with some of the movements that we made, they said it's made a huge operational impact. Likewise, the link, the department goals and performance measures to the board's priorities are included in your budget book, so that when we're budgeting and doing things by budget, it's spelling out your priorities. We also established the project summary for projects, and that's an example here in this slide where anyone can see the type of project, the justification of the project, the cost of the project for the next 5 years, what the cost is anticipated for that project. So you as elected officials know exactly when you're approving these items like you did in the budget, you can see what that impact is over a 5-year period. You look at the Cass County levies. So this information, next couple of slides I'm giving you, is straight from the collector's office. And so this isn't Brad's spin on anything. It came straight from the collector. And so I thank Mr. Mullendorf for giving these, hand out this information to us. You look at Harrisonville in comparison to cities that are like us around us. When you look at these levies, as you know, by state law, cities can have an operating budget up to $1 if approved by the voters. So the voters would have to approve operating costs by up to $1. Can't go any further than that. That happened, I believe, around 2008. When I remember that coming through the state legislature. It used to not have a cap, but it came a cap around $1. However, cities can go over that $1 if there's any type of debt issuance with general obligatory bonds, so GO bonds. So if you look at those, and those that are over the $1, it's because they have some GO bonds that they've issued for those projects. And you can see with cities, and we are, as part of Cass County, we all work together, but we all look at what other communities are doing and why our community is a better community. Well, you look at these on the property tax, and Harrisonville is very competitive on our mill levy. And if you all recall, there's not a GO debt that the city of Harrisonville is utilized. Now, some people say that's good. Other people say that's bad, because most GO debts is a lot towards streets and other type of needs in the community, which we might have to make decisions in the near future about when it comes to EMS. But you look at these in comparison. I also included the Central Cass Fire District because it surrounds the city of Harrisonville. And we can see that for our EMS services within our city limits, it's still more cost effective for people to be within the boundaries of Harrisonville. So when you take the market value of a house, this is from Mr. Mullendorf, is a Harrisonville property tax for 2020 bill that went out. If you had a market value house, and it's not assessment, because a lot of times assessment confuses people, but the $100,000 market value home, you're going to pay $1,286.46. Of that, 81% of that goes to the school district, and 9% goes to the city. And you then see what goes to Cass County Road and Bridge, which the Cass County Road and Bridge is a good thing for us because we get dollars from that that the county sends to us, and that's 3%. So when people are talking to about their tax bill, a lot of times they always come at the cities about their tax bill, but we're right now only at 9% of what their tax bill is. So I like to say we don't ask any more than Jesus does at 10%. So that's a good affordable way of doing this. This next slide these next few slides I'm going to show you is endorsed by the Mid-American Regional Council. Again, this is not Brad's spin on these numbers and from these cities. This is coming that was sent out through the metro managers for these dollars that are invested. So when you look at city property taxes on a $252,000 house, where are we in the average of the metropolitan area? There's 51 communities that were a part of this study. And when you look at the 51 communities, Harrisonville is well below the median average, which is $640 on a $252,000 home. Edwardsville being the highest on just property taxes. So it's affordable, and we're below the average of what it would be on property taxes. So what would it be if we included the property taxes with utilities? Because we hear people talk about that. Well, actually, when you include Harrisonville with our property taxes and our utilities, we are the lowest in the metropolitan area of this study of 51 communities. When you look at the taxes on average and the utility average of 32%, taxes averaging around the 68%. And since 2016, range from Kansas City, Kansas, being the highest at $17,265 to the lowest, which is Harrisonville. Now, this went out throughout the metropolitan area, this same verbiage. Harrisonville is the lowest in that range. So we are more affordable for people to come into this area. The Kansas income tax increased by $464 from 16 to 20. Missouri tax increased to 811 on that income. I think this is a good illustration to show people that it is very affordable to live in Harrisonville within the metropolitan area, and not just the Missouri side, but the Kansas side as well. So when you look at the taxes for a actual single family, property tax, sales tax, income tax, other miscellaneous taxes, Harrisonville is still at the bottom of that affordability for single families, with the average being around $10,657. And so when people talk about, how expensive things are, well, we're really affordable here in Harrisonville, and we are very conscientious of what we're spending, but also what we're taking in as well. So if you took that normal family of what they're paying on that property taxes in a single family, when they pay for those dollars from combined along the way, and this isn't just the cities, but combined, the average is around $5,229, and in Harrisonville, the average is around $4,036. That shows that we're also competitive with the type of homes that are in Harrisonville as well. And so it's not just because we've got low valued homes. It's because we are more affordable and we still are within that range. So then you look at the sales tax in the metropolitan area. Harrisonville is still well below the average on the sales tax at 8.55% in total. 9.3 is the average within all of those communities. But you can see, even at that average, there's quite a few communities a little above those averages. So we are still competitive in the sales tax. So what if a normal family is spending a certain amount of dollars, where would they fall in if they were buying here in Harrisonville? So we're still, if I take a single family and actually what they're spending on an annual basis, they're spending around $1,926 here in Harrisonville, where the average is $2,090. So again, because of that lower sales tax, we still are being competitive within the metro to be able to have affordable things to buy here. I think this is good for people on the square, as well as other businesses that are retailers, within the metropolitan area, that this can make them also competitive in that manner. The next thing is solid waste. We hear a lot about that, different complaints about that along the way. But look at the average in the metro at $244 a year for those type of solid waste for single family. And we are in Harrisonville around $178. So again, even the solid waste contract that we have and that we utilize with municipal waste is still well below the average of what other communities are spending. If you take the utilities for a single family, which is electric service, natural gas, water service, sewer service, solid waste, stormwater management fee service, which a lot of the communities on the Kansas side charge a stormwater fee. A lot on the Missouri side don't. I know Kansas City, Missouri does, but there's very few that charge that stormwater fee. Well, you can see the average of combining all of those utilities for a single family, and Harrisonville is well below the average of all those communities are combined. So the decisions that you've made this past year, when you've been dealing with the water and the sewer issues, as well as the electrical issues, you have not made us more expensive than anyone else in the metropolitan, not just Cass County, but the metropolitan area. And I think that's a real big contribute toward the foresight and the courage that you as a board had to make these hard and difficult decisions, and at the same time keeping them within reason to where we're even still averaging below the average cost for anybody that has a single family. I think these slides are very telling. I think this information is very telling. Again, this isn't Brad Ratliff's spin. People say, "Oh, well, he talked." This came straight from Mark, and those numbers come straight from them. And this is a part of that study that was done by a city within the metro that they worked with to get that information. And so I think it's great information. I'm glad they updated it. It's been a long time since they updated it for the metropolitan area, but I think it's really good information and really shows the good stewardship here in Harrisonville. So next is codes department. As you look at the codes department from residential to commercial, and for the total of that, when you compare 2018 to 2020, you've seen that the total of permits went from 345 in 2020 to 408. Of those, it were 123 commercial in 2018, up to 137 commercial in 2020. And then residential, we had 222 in 2018, down in 2019 to 198, and then well back up to 271 in 2020. And again, remember in 2020, when we're giving these numbers, this is during a pandemic where a lot of things were shut down for over a 3-month period. And can you imagine if we didn't have that, how our numbers would even be climbing even greater? And I think we're going to see a lot of that this year. From those, the codes department by type, and in that type, this shows us the breakout of new to finished to on the commercial. This is just plain commercial, to tenant finish, to occupancy, to demo. Miscellaneous is stuff like permits for lighting, electrical, plumbing, all those kind of things is within the permits of commercial on the miscellaneous portion of it. But you can see that we've had a push upward, especially on the occupancy, and as well as the tenant finish that's been going on this past year. So when you look at it with the type for residential, you've got the demo, which is a big story there. You had 3 in 2018, 3 in 2019. We had 14 in 2020. Chris and Casey are doing a great job staying on top of this and identifying these areas, as well as you see the new and all of the increases that we're seeing. So we're seeing not just the commercial side of it, but also the residential side. We're seeing a much greater uptick in residential code department type of improvements. So when you deal with nuisance code, which is a big deal here in our community, 2018, there was 138 code enforcement issues. 2019 was 181. 2020 was 690 that was done on enforcement. That is because you as a board instructed us to enforce the code, and you also you had approved an actual property maintenance code. If you recall, the property maintenance code was pretty vague, but in 2020, you all passed that to make it more obvious of what needs to be done. Chris will tell you, Katie's been a big part of that enforcement and does a great job of doing that for the city. And so we're going to keep that up at the directive of the board. So then what kind of nuisance code, what type of things are we talking about? If you look at, these are the main type of things that you see the increase in. Trash went from in 14 to 2020, 101 of inciting people that have trash in their yards and cleaning up their yards. Inoperable vehicles is always a big problem in a lot of communities, but you've seen inoperable vehicles going from 9 in 2018 to 4 in 2019 to up to 26 in 2020. Another big component, furniture setting outside, appliances setting outside, where you had 1 on the enforcement in 2018, you had 7 on 2019 and 39 in 2020. Illegal signs wasn't having much activity this past year, up to 117. Property maintenance, multiple issues. Chris explains this to be, it was multiple things from trash to maybe vehicles to rubbish. And these were increased greatly. Grass, not cutting your grass. The vape properties, wasn't really a lot going on with that. And so we've enforced that in 2020. Parking on the grass, dangerous buildings is a big uptick and being identified throughout the community, as well as demolition. And you see that demolition that's been moving forward with the codes department. So our codes department has done a great job this past year and doing that enforcement, as well as following your all's directive and goals in the code department area. Police department, calls for service were up. We see that in 2018, total calls at 369 to 3,741 in 2020. Police reports are down, and also arrests were down. I think a lot of people were staying in more, of course, because of the COVID event. That's been pretty standard across the metro on those type of activities, except where there was unfortunately some rioting that was going on, and they seen increases in that area. And thankfully, we didn't have that here in our community. Police department traffic, on traffic enforcement, 2018, warning tickets around 1761, actual issued were 1,551. We had an increase on the warnings of 1,059, and then the tickets being issued and 664. I give you this because a lot of times we say, oh, the police is they're being too rough or they're being unyielding and all those kind of things. Well, no, they're actually being pretty polite. Now, it goes both ways. Some people may say, well, they should issue more. And then other people go, well, I like that they're giving more warnings than they're actually doing. But one of the things that we're also seeing was the crashes and injury with no injury were down. I think, again, COVID, a lot of people not as out and moving around like there, and that's kind of a national trend. The narcotics, though, and the alcohol is ticked up. That may be because of COVID as well. That was going on with that. But again, this is giving you just a snapshot when we're talking about traffic enforcement. I know there's some citizens that like to really focus on that, and that shows you that We are a responsive, but we are a caring police department about our community. If you look at police department by calls and the type of calls that you see, 2020 being the orange, to 2018 being the more, I call it green gray, there on the backside. We've seen an actual downturn in narcotics arrest. We're seeing that business and burglary type of theft is down as well. Could be due to COVID, but we're seeing that trend going down. What I do notice that the assaults are up a little. Again, could it be people's frustration of being in the lockdown? But we did see a uptick in the aggravated assaults, especially. A lot more people agitated over this past year, and I think makes it more dangerous for our law enforcement. Animal control. You look at where there's a downturn as far as dogs being relinquished and the euthanization. This is about 4 years of data for you, and you can see from the dogs being transferred and dogs being impounded. From 2016 at 351 to 2020 to 151. Some of that's due with some of the contract that we're not doing anymore with surrounding cities, mainly because of staffing. It's really been difficult for the chief in keeping staffing in that department. And then you look at the same thing, same type of trend with the cats. But our animal shelter is doing well with the challenges that are there. I think some of it is, as you see, I think some of the COVID related, but I think the downturn mainly has to do with some of the contracts that we're not doing any longer as well. Going to the municipal court, and you're seeing the downturn of cases filed, cases disposed, warrants as well. I'm going to talk a little bit more in the next slide of the reason why we're seeing that downturn in our court system. Of course, our court in 2020 was affected, probably the departments, because they couldn't have court for 3 months because of COVID. And so when that happens, a lot of things get continued, and a lot of the cases didn't get completed. So top violations of municipal court. A lot of people don't realize that they deal with the number one, driving while suspended and revoked. Second would be possession of drug paraphernalia. And third would be domestic assault. So our court deals with a lot of wide ranging issues. And a lot of people think it's just traffic, and that's not always the reason, or always the higher volume is traffic, but we deal with a lot of other different things as well within our court system. And I am very adamant that our court system is there to keep our public safe, just like our police department is. And there's nothing more defeating for our police department than when they're enforcing the law and then they can't be able to make sure that person has the repercussions for violating the law. So when you look at that, and I'm going to give more on the reason, is that SB 5 and 572. When you look at, in comparison, SB 5 and 572 started coming into effect in 2015. You can see the FTAs, which is failure to appear, because essentially you can't charge anyone with failure to appear anymore since that law came out. So they can skip town, they cannot respond, and there's not a lot of remedy other than after so many times, then warrants can be issued, and then the warrant, you got to find the person. So you see in parallel to the total warrants, look at how much our warrants were jumping up at the same time that our failure to appears were jumping up in conjunction with that. So it becomes more time consuming, it becomes much more paperwork, becomes much more tracking, it becomes more of a problem for our police department becomes more of a problem for our court until they can finally get that addressed by the legislature. Every year we think we get close, and something happens. Well, it's usually one individual that was the author of both those bills that makes sure that those corrections get derailed. 2020 was lower, and that's, I believe, just because of the 3 months that we had no court activity as a part of that. So we go to EMS. And so you got 2017, 2018, 2019, and 2020 across your screen. And when you look at the orange is the actual build. When you look at the our light orange, the dark orange is the actual collected, and then the brown is the amount that was written off in each one of those years. As you can see, those that are being billed in comparison to what's being collected and the amount that's being written off is a steep venture. That's where the general fund is getting taxed a lot with coming up with those shortfalls. We're probably over this next year going to be talking about that in nauseum with you all until you're probably not going to want to hear about it anymore. But we want to go through it painstakingly with you to get your all's direction on how to correct it, how to deal with it, and what the goal of the board is in doing that. So that kind of gives you the numbers of what we're actually billing, what we're actually collecting, and those amounts that are being written off as a result of that. And those are sizable numbers that we're looking at. When you look at the EMS calls by comparison, calls for service, we've seen that actually continuing to kind of trend up. But then what was kind of interesting to us during the COVID era is actually our calls for service started going down. People were more concerned about riding an ambulance because of COVID. And so we've seen a lot of those calls for services. You know, it kind of amazes me because it's like, oh, well, it's not that important for me to call an ambulance. I can drive myself when they're worried about COVID. But when it's not that way, they're calling the ambulance. You see the EMS calls, comparison to billable calls to transfers. Chief Myler says those transfers are the actual transfers from Cass Medical. So when we're looking at how many of those transfers are happening, that's quite a few transfers coming out of Cass Medical. And as you all recall, we're limited on the billing with that we'll be talking here within the next couple of months about renewing the contract with them. But at the same time, showing that that's expensive amount of transfers because that's an ambulance rolling down the road with an EMT and a paramedic on board, and that gets real expensive. And so we wanted to call that all to your attention, that when you're averaging on average around $1,200 a year that is coming out being transferred, that's quite a few coming out of just the one hospital. Utility department. These are our unsung heroes in the city. Those ladies at the front office and Jeremy do a great job in dealing with a lot of the problems. When you look at these numbers for late payment, so last year for 2020, we had 8,780 people that paid late. When you look at it with the cutoffs would be actually being told you're going to be cut off. You know, you now are paying a penalty and you're going to be cut off, and they get that second notification. So last year they sent out 1,265 of those notices. Of actual shutoffs that were done for the year, we were at 404. And then you got the new accounts at 1,108. So if you average those by the month, that our staff is dealing with 731 people, 731 accounts a month on average of late payments. On average, 105 people they're having to deal with saying you're going to get shut off, and then actual shutting off on average around 34 people. Then at the same time, updating the system with new accounts, which is 92 on average. The majority of those are not new homes. Them are rentals. So you can see when we do comparison of the amount of late payments and cutoffs and shutoffs and new accounts, you'd be surprised how many are the actual rentals that are costing more time, more effort, more energy for the front office staff. In conjunction with the combined water and sewer system group, they work a lot with the front office there of the utility department. They also dealt with 4 hydrant replacements last year, 7 sewer backups, 15 water breaks, manhole rehab. Them are actual rehabs of manholes, 30, and actually did 450 manhole inspections, 220 valve exercise, which is going through making sure those valves are being utilized, and then 1,308 locates. If someone calls in a locate, they have to do that. They're doing all of that in conjunction that they're dealing with all of that with the front office as well. So those guys stay very busy throughout the year, dealing with a lot of places that they're being pulled in many directions. Likewise, our wastewater and water plant, a lot of their operations, as you can see, the maintenance hours and the lab testing and DNR sample testing takes up almost those 2 things right there, most of their time. Plant operations of startup and shutdown, lift station maintenance, record keeping. You would not believe all the record keeping they have to do and all the reports they have to provide to DNR on a daily and weekly basis. Same thing with our water plant employees. The lab testing, of course, is very important for our drinking water. A lot of people like to complain about, oh, we don't, this or that with the water. These guys work hard making sure that everything's right with our water. So you can see that with much of their time that's being used for testing, and much of their time is being used for DNR sampling and testing. Plant operations, adjusting those chemicals and those feed systems. They spend a lot of their time doing that as well. Backwash filters, and then again, record keeping and reporting. And then of course, with both sides, they're still mowing and weed eating and maintaining those areas of those plants and those operations. And we'll move on to the airport. The airport is a lot of operations out there. I was surprised with some of these numbers. I don't know if you all be surprised as much as I was surprised. 30 military operations that are out there. That includes the military landing Apache helicopters and the CH-470s, I think they called it, out in that area. The transient aircraft, you can see that that's where it's in the now if I butcher the word, the fly guys will get on me. Dave's on here, he'll probably correct me. But the iterant type of operations, that's people that are flying in to gas up or flying in for those type of reasons. 3,830 people or aircraft last year in 2020. I don't know about you, but I was very surprised with the high amount of operations that is going on at that airport. The amount of people that are flying in, flying out, the military operations to the local operations, people flying in and out of our airport. With that, with the gasolines we sold 12,035 gallons. The gross revenue was around 47,000. By the time we paid everything, we netted about $8,200 for last year for that operation. So airport's very busy. Ted in work session is probably going to mention some things after his stormwater, but there's a lot more opportunity coming up on the airport. A lot of federal and state funds that are coming down on airports, and we want to take every opportunity for our airport and improving anywhere we can with our airport. Then going on to the public works streets and the work orders that are done, and most of their time, of course, being spent on the road maintenance and other maintenance that's along with that, to even street sweeping, to sign maintenance, stormwater maintenance that you see on there as well. Airport maintenance, our street department with our airport personnel work together. So they do a lot of, if you recall, last fall when I talked about sealing, it was our public works street guys that were out there doing those seals on the pavement out there. Special events, all the events that are going on in the town, on the square, you can see in conjunction with that amount of litter cleanup that they're doing as well along our roadways. So again, doing a lot of hours, 16,640 hours combined with this, most of that, of course, being maintenance to our roadways. You look at our electric department, the total kilowatts received and the total kilowatts metered. That from industry standard, from what Andy says, should be under 3%. In 2019, it was at 4.8, almost 5%. We've been able to improve that for 2020 with a lot of the tree trimming that you see going on right now. And the guys that are out there getting that accomplished. It's a big component of it. And the reason I tell you that is when you look at our substations and the outages in those substations, our total outages that were climbing, as you can see from 2018 and to 2019 and 2020, it was climbing dramatically on our outages. When you look at what the reason is, look at that right side. 62% in 2020 was wildlife, squirrels, raccoons. 2019. So if you average those 3 years, that 58% of the reason why we were having outages is because of wildlife. And I know, I like trees too, but these trees that are under our lines and close to our lines, they just got to be trimmed back and they just got to be eliminated, because the only way we're going to make sure that we don't have as much loss of power is stop the source of where the wildlife is getting to our lines. And that's through the trees. It's never popular. People have it out and they see that tree and it's in the city's easement. City goes out there to take that tree out. It's very upsetting to them because that's their tree. But the reality is it's in the city easement and right away. And we're doing this not to be mean, but we're trying to safeguard our electric, because as you all know right now, as cold as it is, the last thing you want to do is have your own town out of electric right now, as Texas is dealing with. We want to make sure we're doing all we can do to prevent any of those type of activities. So we're curtailing that, but as you can see, those outages were climbing pretty dramatic. And so we're having to be very dramatic in trying to address those issues. And I think Andy's come up with a great plan of addressing those issues. We have 15 feeders that are coming in. That's where our contracted group is focusing on. Then our staff is focusing on the hot spots of those tree trimmings. And so we want to make sure over a 3-year period, our hope is to have all of those 15 feeders completely cleaned out and making sure that we have clear lines through there. Going on to the Parks Department, membership average last year around 3,881 on membership. Where's the most of the money coming from on the community center? Annual memberships, around 373,000 for those memberships. The second highest part would be daily passes at $43,670 came in to the community center. When we did comparison of January of last year to January of this year, we're not very far off on our memberships. So thankfully, our members are sticking with us, and a lot of them have been talking about hearing about the excitement of improvements that the board is moving forward on. So I see that number growing as we go along. Likewise, when you look at recreational programs coming into the community center, the youth basketball, the summer camp, and the before and after program is the biggest revenue generators for the community center. So you have the before and after school program bringing in around $21,000. You've got the summer camp around $19,000, and then the youth basketball around the $13,000 coming into the center. There's of course the fitness classes and the water aerobics and the swim lessons, but those three are the bigger generators being utilized within the community center. The park fund itself, as you all know, general fund makes up a big component. That green part of the pie that you see there is that transfer into the park fund that we do on a year-to-year basis. So around that 234,000. The other is for taxes, that the park tax that comes in around $208,000. The aquatic fund didn't have a lot of activity last year, but one thing I wanted to point out to the board, even with that activity not happening, it still costs us money. I mean, you still have maintenance items you got to do. You still got things that are still got to be paid. And so you can see, even with the expenditures of doing nothing, as far as having any swim activities there, there's still cost around close to $15,000 that had to come in for that. And so, of course, through some of the funds, apart funds and general fund, that comes in to try to help balance that fund as well. Community development commissions and boards over this past year, you're seeing that the meetings didn't have as many meetings as in prior years, mainly because of COVID. A lot of the issues that were going on with that, amendments and application requests. But what we've seen though is a rezoning. There's been a lot more uptick on the rezoning, and as well as applications and requests. We've been seeing that moving forward or moving up as well as the SUPs and for final plats. And of course, we had the annexation. Economic development, we had a lot of ED activity this past year with the development of comprehensive economic development incentive policy that you all passed. We also prepared and submitted to the Department of Revenue the TIF and the annual reports, and for the market TIF and the town center TIF. Held enhanced enterprise zone annual board of directors meeting. You all moved forward with that, improving the mayor's appointments to that, and they've already started moving forward with education on that. Been collecting buildings and sites to be a part of the RFI proposals, as well as the Chapter 100 closure of the Walmart DC, and assisted with the Sapp brothers on the annexation with that. Trying to give some highlights there. There was a lot of other little things along the way with the RFI submittals. A couple of them that were submitted for 210 jobs, 150,000 square foot building, possible future expansion. But that's about a $75 to $100 million new capital investment. Same thing with another type of submittal for 250 to 450,000 square feet for a new building, 168 million. And capital investment, personal property, about 280.5 million, 411 jobs, 411 new full-time jobs. So we've been very active and very competitive going after those opportunities that have come up. Likewise, this past year, the board addressed a lot of the code, nuisance code violations. More than 280%, rolled out the C-Click fix, added a new code enforcement officer to focus on the nuisance code issues. Staff identified all the blighted properties, residential and commercial, as well as you as a board updated and approved the international building code for the city as well. We hired our economic development this past year professional. We addressed the building fees this past year, and you as a board got those completed and made huge impacts on the connectivity or the connection of the water and the sewer. I'm meeting with Water District 9 here within the next 2 weeks to talk to them about reduction in their connection fees and see if they would be amenable to working with the city on a lot of the developments that are in their district and moving forward with being competitive. And so I'm hopeful to create a good relationship with them and partnership. We're also utilizing the care funds to meet some of the technology needs that have been needed. And then we also dealt with a heavy more involvement in KC-ADC. Harrisonville wasn't at the table on a lot of that, and we are heavily involved at that table as well. A huge year for capital investment. We had a 5-year CIP plan that the board approved as well for short-term and long-term and projects and equipment. We're utilizing the C-click fix model for some of the numbers you saw tonight were from that component where they're utilizing work orders now so that we can track the productivity within those departments of Public Works and the Parks Department. Updated and the water sewer study that the board approved for the not just the infrastructure, but also the rate structure for the water, sewer, and electric that the board did this past year, as well as a 10-year of improvements over that 10-year year of the water and wastewater study. We now have the water paying for its cost, sewer paying for its cost. We secured a $993,000 federal grant that will be for the Muddy Creek contributory or the tributary project of 2023, and then developed a feasibility funding plan for the DNR, which required the improvements at the wastewater plant, as well as the feasibility for the South Packing Plant for a more cost-effective and revenue building system, and then found a funding way to complete the outdoor pool makeover. I think it's going to be a big plus in the community when that outdoor pool is completed, and a lot of the things that will be accomplished with that as a quality of life for our residents. Stormwater has been heavily invested with the gauges that were installed at the Muddy Creek. Basically, there at the Public Works Street Department, it's collecting that data for that gauge, where we'll be able to notify the city if the rain is coming in at a level that flooding could be an issue. We developed that feasibility plan, and you as a board this last meeting approved the donation of the 28 acres to build the regional detention that'll make a huge impact on the south flooding throughout that ward. And we also developed that feasibility plan to repair Lake Luna in the city lake, and using Nexo now to notify staff or notify residents of emergencies. And then we also have a funding mechanism for stormwater projects that we'll be able to start planning out for stormwater improvements within the budget, and completed a stormwater plan for the city. And Ted's going to be talking more about that in your work session. Then additional highlights of contracted services. This past year, we RFP'd out and brought in a new municipal prosecutor and a judge. We also contracted with Buchanan Company for HR services and improved the HR components within the city. We issued a newspaper of record, the South Cass Tribune. We also did an RFP recommendation for the city attorney, and the BOA approved that. Also with Joe Lauber on economic development. And then we did the contracted CPA work with Baker Tilly, saving around $35,000 annually. You also approved the new contract with health insurance that saved $32,000 annually. And then the new contract of new liability insurance savings of $120,000 that was done in 2020 as well. Policy highlights were improving the security of the city-owned assets and safety of employees and citizens, updated the human resource manual, developed a legislative policy, updated a procurement process to allow the city to move quickly and efficiently on BOA goals and directives, citywide organizational review and changes, and then created a board policy to allow citizens to get on the agenda to get them quick information and access to that information in a timely manner. So it's a busy year. All these things that you all accomplished, that staff and the team here accomplished with you during a very rough pandemic year, and everyone should be congratulated on a very tough year. It was, I put it full of good changes and strong challenges that was accomplished by the mayor and the board and the staff here at the city of Harrisonville. So with that, Madam Mayor, if I haven't made anyone go to sleep. And if I know how to quit doing my screen share.
All right. That was very impressive. It certainly is easy to see things in pictures. So thank you very much. I know you and staff worked very hard in putting that all together. Does the board have questions or comments of Mr. Ratliff? Alderman Milner?
I really like that presentation, Brad. Could you share some of that with us? I like especially having those numbers where Harrisonville stands as opposed to the other communities around us, because that seems to be the one question we get probably the most is, well, you know, it costs so much to hear. Well, no, let me show you this chart. Let me show you what's good.
My plan was to, you all have this presentation in your boxes for a hard copy. And also I'll be emailing this out to you. Perfect. And then we are going to put this on the website, the city's website, where anybody can look at it as well.
That's a great idea. That's a great idea, because I think, like you said, a lot of those numbers surprised me, especially the airport stuff. That was something, but I think we'll see once the citizens pick up that that's out there, I think we'll get some nice comments about that. So thank you.
And you know, numbers don't lie. So
absolutely. Right. Absolutely.
Yeah. Other comments from the board? They're not asleep, so they must just be pleased. All right. Comments from staff. I know we have department heads on here. Anything you want to communicate to the board tonight? All right, then we'll move on to Alderman and committee reports. Let me start with Alderman Dorhoff.
Yes, I was out at the hospital on Saturday helping out with COVID vaccines, and want to tell Sarah Lee that was in charge of that what an excellent job she did. We got multiple comments about how well organized it was, and vaccinated over 425 people on Saturday.
Wow. Wow.
That's all I've got.
Okay, great experience. I was impressed too when I was there, just tremendously organized. I'm just really very pleased. Alderman Zaring.
Yes, Madam Mayor. I'd just like to give kudos out to all the city workers that have to get out in this cold weather and everything, EMS, police, fire, you name it, the road crews, electric. It's good to see them out there. You can see them out there working hard, and definitely appreciate the fact that I don't have to get out there, you know, and get into that and get cold. So I've been there before. I know how that feels, and would just like, you know, the department heads to pass that on to them, that we really do appreciate what they're doing for us.
Absolutely. Alderman Reese.
Yes, ma'am. I don't have a lot. I definitely agree with the organization of our local hospital. It gets enough criticism that we need to let them know in no uncertain terms what an incredible job they've done out there on this COVID thing. I mean, from the time you went through the front door and up the elevator and around the corner and filled out your papers, it just went zip, zip, zip. And I'll bet you that there are places in Kansas City that didn't do 1/4 as good. So I would like to pass that on. Second thing, George Freeze, I am so impressed that you sat through this entire meeting. And if you haven't been to one of these meetings before, this is rather typical of the kind of things that we do. And so welcome. And once again, I'm super impressed that you stuck out the whole thing. Thank you for coming.
Of course, thank you for having me. I really enjoy getting to learn more about my community, and getting to see a lot of these reports is, really helpful to sort of visualize how Harrisonville has gotten through the pandemic and dealt with all kinds of issues in this past year. So thank you very much for having me. And again, I wanted to express my thanks for all of your support for FFA, Traction, and all of the other programs in our community. It's really appreciated.
Well, welcome again, and come back anytime you like. That's mine.
Okay, thank you. Alderman Milner.
Mike stole my thunder. I wanted to really thank all the staff. I'm sure this has been, last week and this week have been a long weekend for them and a long week. And I hope they understand how much we appreciate them. And maybe some of these snowy mornings, we probably need to think about dropping off some donut boxes here, there, and everywhere, and some nice strong coffee, because they sure put in the hours, and I hope they truly realize how much we appreciate them, because I know our community does. And even, just on social media, which sometimes we hate to see, but sometimes we like to see how much appreciation people have for the hard work that our city staff does to keep their community safe and secure. So kudos to them.
Absolutely. Thank you for that. Alderman Mills.
Okay, we're unmuted.
Yes.
Yes. Oh, there goes Mr. Freeze. I was going to, same comment. That was something for him to stick that out. And kudos to all the staff in this incredible weather situation. And I had similar experience at the hospital. Wonderful. And then I had a great experience with one of our, the police department, and one of the officers. He was bundled all up, and I didn't get to his name, but we were just working with our eyeballs as far as the coats we had on and the masks and the hats. So, but we did had good response and good with the police officer. So we're doing good.
Excellent. Thank you. Alderman Franklin. Unmute yourself. Okay, there you go.
Yes, I wanted to thank the street crews and the electric crews as well. They have done a wonderful job this past weekend. Have seen them out and about in weather that I know has got to be awful. I wanted to extend another thank you to Andy Pollard for putting in the street light at the bottom of Wall Street going into Lord's Park. I've driven by there a couple of times, and that light makes a lot of difference. So thank you again for that. And I also wanted to say that I did the virtual seminar for the Missouri Municipal League, and I enjoyed that. It was done in a timely fashion and very informative. So I look forward to the next meeting. So other than that, that's all I have. Thank you.
Thank you. Alderman Davidson.
It'll unmute me. Thank you, Mayor. Again, I want to thank Brad for his presentation. He did a wonderful job. I like all of the information that's there. I think it's helpful for us to be able to understand where the city came from and where we're going. Alderman Zering stole, as most of all the rest of them said, stole the thunder, because I think a lot of people don't actually realize the difficulty and challenges that are out there in days and weeks like we've had in this last week. As well, I've been there, so I understand it. So thank you very much to all the employees that have put in the hard work, long hours, overnight, and as well. Also, I wanted to say that got to spend last Saturday with Grant Perky out at the community center. He's a great addition, obviously, to the staff and to the community center. And I think he's got a lot of good ideas to move forward with the community center and all that he is in charge of. So I wanted to say thank you again to him for the time I got to spend with him and the information I was able to gather. I think that's it. Thank you, Mayor.
Okay, thank you, Alderman. Alderman Turner.
I was able to attend the legislative conference in Jeff City. It was very informational, and got to listen to a lot of our state representatives and House reps. There's a lot of new bills been introduced. Hopefully, some will help us more than hurt us. We have a lot of new, what they call freshmen, which is new House reps that have never been here before. So, I mean, there's a challenge for all of us communities to be sure to reach out and speak to our representatives to let them know what we want and what's going to help us. And kudos to the street department for taking care of the roads and keeping everything clean for us. That's it.
Excellent. Thank you, Alderman. Mr. Ratliff, do you have another report for us, your city administrator report?
Yes, ma'am. Street departments did get completed. I know Alderman Franklin talked about the culverts and the ditches of Highland Drive. Also clean out the detention or the catch basins and ditches on Sanders Street. For the event, we scraped and treated 1,165 lane miles in the city and put out 68 tons of salt. That salt cost about $4,600 for us to put out over those lane miles. Then the CW SS staff are meeting about new meter reading equipment that they will be instituting. We also had JCI Industries and Anaqua, or am I saying that right? Anaqua, Carl, came out to provide information to staff on the ultraviolet disinfection equipment. We also have staff meet on the Muddy Creek Regional or Glen Eagle Retention Basin to award, to put it, it is designed to award for engineer on contract. Also for the Lake Harrisonville Spillway Pipe and Rehabilitation Project. Some of you may not know Lake Harrisonville. There's a 10-foot in diameter a pipe that goes under the county road there from Lake Harrisonville. It has a hole in it. And so if you notice in your staff report weekly, I said to Carl today, why is the lake always 3 inches low? You always say it's 3 inches low. No matter how much rain we got, it's 3 inches low. He said, because that's where the hole is in the pipe. So we're losing that water for that. And so we're working in conjunction with the county on the replacement of that pipe because it goes under the county road. And so the county we're paying for the pipe and the county will be installing it and taking out the old and putting new. And it's a interlocal agreement that will be issuing with the county to get that accomplished. So that's what that means on that. But yeah, it's a 10-foot diameter pipe. I mean, you can drive a Volkswagen through it, and which is, pretty good size. We also, on the disinfection system, had a discussion with them on the possibly enclosed masonry building. That would be around $900,000. And then the engineering and construction for ultraviolet disinfection project is estimated around $2.5 million with the completion of it this year. So we're hoping to get the submittal design and alignment study and all those for staff review on the 5th of March. We also did the same with Lake Luna and City Lake projects. Had a kickoff meeting on the 16th today. And then at this meeting, the engineer reviewed the project plans, geotech. We're also meeting with the adjacent property owner about dirt that may be needed for that project. when it comes time for that and getting that accomplished as well. One of the more concerning efforts is the old police department. If you've noticed, we've got some cones out and stuff because there's bricks falling off the building, and we don't want anyone to hit the head. We did already have brought in a structural engineer to review that. Staff's going to have to keep a close eye on it, but we're going to have to be talking with you all in nauseam about that as well, because the building is getting to a point of a lot of trouble. And so we need to address those issues. So kind of want to let you all know, we're keeping a close eye on that. Chris Arthur is instructed me and the chief, if he notices any of those walls pushing out any further, that we'll have to evacuate the vehicles that are in that building and probably block off things around that building as well, to make sure that nobody gets hurt and nothing gets demolished. Then the EMS services, the vaccinations have been started to be issued to the public, as was pointed out. We're hoping that seems to be the vaccinations are trickling in to Cass County. So we're hoping that in time that will come up to more vaccinations that are available to the public. I have to say, you know, and I've had to respond to people, the city is not in charge of that. We're not in charge of the vaccinations or the development of it or the deployment of it. We get a lot of questions on that as a city. But I do know that, as was pointed out, the hospital, the health department in the county is doing everything they can do to get that out to the public as quick as they can. And then you're going to notice that the green light dispensary is going to have a lot more activity, and you've probably been noticing that. So removing that is going forward on that project. The signage issue has not been completely remedied yet. Staff doesn't care for the big sign that's there, so we're trying to have a discussion with them on that. We also received proposed remodel for the Taco Bell that came in for review. So we'll be seeing a facelift at the Taco Bell. We're also moving forward with the refrigeration alterations and additions at Walmart Distribution Center is on the way, and the structural steel work is underway. Ammonia refrigeration work's underway, so our staff's working on those reviews and inspections, as well as the Walmart retail store is projects on the way. It's about 15% complete. And so that, with also the Aldi's, and the Aldi store is going to be slowed down a little bit with the weather that's going on right now, but they were hoping to get moving forward with the site work and getting that completed. Then staff's working on a lot of properties, and there's a list of that in your weekly report this last Friday of the different properties that the codes department is dealing with and where they're at in the process on those. And then we received 10 submittals on the Harrisonville Comprehensive Master Plan. So that's great to have that many submittals to review. They came in from firms in Kansas City, Chicago, Denver, Omaha, and Raleigh. So a lot of interest in that project. There's a selection committee of 5 that'll be reviewing this 10 to pare it down. And then when it becomes who to be awarded, that will come to you all for the final decision on that to approve on the comprehensive master plan and the firm that will be conducting that. And with that, Madam Mayor, I believe that's all I have.
Thank you, Brad. Let's see, we have your January 2021 municipal court report in your packet. And I see Mr. Minnick is still on with us. Dennis, do you have any questions from the media tonight?
No, I sure don't. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. I want to give kudos to Chief Hofer for opening up the lobby of the police department over the weekend as a warming center. I don't believe anyone took him up on his offer, but it certainly gains the city some good PR to be able to offer that. The plan was to allow people who needed a warm place to go to come to the police department. And then we were going to utilize the fire department if we had more people than the lobby at the police department could hold. So just so you know, if you know of anyone who needs a warming center, I've heard today that the Cass County Rescue Mission across the street from City Hall is going to be open from 8 p.m. to 8 a.m. They're providing cots and some food. So if you hear of any folks that need to be able to get in out of the cold, there is another location for that. So you've heard a couple of people comment about the COVID vaccinations and the good job that the hospital's doing. I've been watching the COVID numbers and I'm pleased that they're starting to trend down. Cass County numbers are looking much better. Harrisonville numbers are looking much better. I don't think it's time to let our guard down, but I think that it's probably time to open City Hall back up for meetings. I'm still going to require masks to be worn in all city-owned buildings because I think that's one of the precautions that has enabled us to see our numbers begin to trend down, is the precautions that people are taking. So that being said, we're going to open City Hall back up for meetings, and I am pleased to have you come back to City Hall for our city council meetings beginning in March. I think you'll be very pleased when you come here and you see the different things that have happened here that are COVID related. You know, we've prepared this building not only for the current COVID, but in the event that we have a resurgence, we're in a much better shape now than we were before. What you'll see is the carpet has been removed from the entire location here and has been replaced with tile, because it's much easier to clean it and sanitize it than it is carpet. You'll see that the city council chambers, the pole that was always right in the middle of the floor has been removed, and that has enabled us to put city staff at the table here in front of the dais and open up more seating area for the audience and still allow them to socially distance. You'll see some new audio-visual equipment here that will enable staff to record our meetings and in the future to be able to live stream them. So I'm very pleased with the improvements that have been made here at City Hall for the safety of our employees and our residents. And I would welcome you back to City Hall for the council meetings beginning in March. That being said, let's have a motion to adjourn, and we'll take 5 minutes before we begin for work session. So motion for adjournment, please.
Make a motion to adjourn?
I'll second.
Okay, I have a motion from Alderman Dorhoff with a second from Alderman Mills. All in favor of adjourning?
Aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Thank you. We're adjourned. We'll come back in 5 minutes for work session. Thank you all.